Well, hello there. Today I'm going to be covering migration and what are its impacts on economies of different countries, and whether migration should happen, and whether what are the reasons why it happens, and whether it will be needed more in the future. So let's start by defining what migration is. And migration is a influx or outflux of people from one country to another, given the countries have borders, and that happens when people have, of course, reasons to do so, and those reasons are primarily economic or political. Now, economic reasons is cost of living, the quality of life, the infrastructure, and the political reasons will be persecution, war, and other nefarious things. So these are the main reasons for migration. The other are cataclysms, like world cataclysms, like floods or earthquakes. That can be also a reason, but those are very rare to happen. So most of those are economic or political. So if we look at the population projections for the world, if we divide the world into developed and they say developing countries, it's more politically correct. Before it was underdeveloped countries, then it was least developed countries, now they're developing countries. So if we divide them into that, and it's mostly the West, as in North America, excluding Mexico, Europe, then Japan, and Australia with New Zealand, those would be the so let's say they fall under the developed countries list. And if we take those countries and we, let's say, compare them to the other countries, we can say that their economic stability and their progress is much better. It's of a greater degree. And if we see the population differences, we see that in these countries, there are the population death overgrowth is rather stabilized. Some say it's declined, but as figures shows now it's rather stable, maybe decreasing in certain, but growing in others, also due to migration. So it's more or less same level. Now, what about the developing countries? In developing countries, the demographic image is rather different. If we look in Africa and Asia and Latin America, South America, we can see that on these three continents, the biggest, let's say, contributor to the population growth is Africa, followed by Asia, and then followed by Latin America. All right, so per year we have an output of 75 million people in those countries, birth over death. So if we compare that to the developed countries, we can say that difference is clear. That total population for developing countries is much higher than for developed countries. So how does it translate economically? Well, let's see. Given the economic outtake of the developing countries and the developed ones, we can see that the developing countries have many issues. Normally they are of economic nature, but also political nature. Sometimes those are dependent or they are affected one by other side. So for example, some political decisions that affect economies and some economic decisions that affect politics, which ends up affecting economics again. And what we have people fleeing the country. So we have economic reasons, which is a major contributor to the migration in the world. And then we have the military reasons, political reasons, persecution. Persecution is a very small amount, but mostly refugees who flee war or war conflict. And so what do we have? We have these people leaving those countries, and now you're thinking, well, who would leave those countries? Can everybody leave? Can we all help them? And the answer is yes, but not through migration. And here's why. Think of who would migrate. How much of the migration would exist if there would be no economic differences in the countries worldwide? Let's say Angola or I don't know, South Africa or Bangladesh or I don't know, Brazil would have same economic level as Germany or USA or France or Italy, even if it was at least Spain. How much migration do you think would there be? How much migration would there be? And the answer, for economic reasons, there would be approximately zero migration. So it leaves us with what? Catastrophe and natural disasters, which is understandable, and nobody will argue against that. But other than that and economic reasons, we have only political reasons. So why do political reasons happen? Why do politically motivated migrations happen? Well, it's either war conflict, which happens because somebody has bad understanding of politics, because war is the least efficient, is the most barbaric way of politics, and least efficient, of course. So we have people who going through armed conflicts, and you ask, well, why would they go through armed conflicts? And the reasons is normally, well, to gain more land, to gain more influence, maybe resources. It's rarely about ideals. If you find wars, most of the wars were also for resources, and since resources are finite, most of them, it means that there will be more and more wars in the future for that reason. Now you ask yourself, what can we do? Finite resources, increased population, because no matter how much Western populations will decline, the rest of the world will overshoot for the difference by a huge margin. So we think, well, what's the reason for all of that? Well, somebody is doing it for ambition, somebody is doing it for personal gains, somebody wants to stay in history as the I want to be the master and I want to be remembered. And it can be anything. And so what happens? These people think, maybe sometimes they think for good reasons, what they do is right, and so they wage wars for control over other people. So question would be, how many people would likely to go to war, or how many people would likely to support a conflict, which, given that all other countries have the same economic level, how many people in certain country would you think would support that? How many people would support some war? The answer is none. And the only way it would happen if it was an authoritarian state. But authoritarian states don't perform well economically, which means they would never reach those same levels. Therefore, we will in the next episodes see through different ideologies, and we will try to argue against or for them and see which are least efficient and which are the most efficient, economic wise, of course, politically as well, but I'm interested mostly in economics. So what we have those countries, and it means dictators. So to be successful economically, you cannot have a dictatorship, which can be rather detrimental to the success and the efficiency of the policies. So we have that, and it means no more armed conflict. The only conflict then would be for resources. And how do you do that? Well, if your management of the economies was unsustainable, then of course there will be resource wars, and that case is one more talk for how the economies in different countries should be of different level, and how populations in different countries should be of different level, and why. Because sadly, on our planet we have limits, and it means that we have to be responsible towards everybody else on this planet. And if we're not, we're a danger to everybody else, which is not good and can lead to armed conflict as well. So, given that, there are no reasons for migration. What are the reasons? There is war, no more, because economically stable, people don't support that unless it's dictatorship, but dictatorships fail economically anyway. So, I mean, they can try and strive, but the amount of people who will want to undersign for that will be extremely small, and the chances of the such dictatorship surviving for a long period of time is also very small, considering that people will be like, well, if other countries successfully do it without any authoritarian regime, so can we get rid of the authoritarian regime? And so it happens. So the question is, of course, there are certain factors of which I'm going to talk in the next episode, such as intelligence and how it affects the understanding of the ideologies, and how certain ideologies survive due to effects of intelligence of general population, and the effect on the understanding of the economies and politics that these politicians promote while in power, and how the people respond given their intelligence level. So this will going to be a topic for the next episodes. And now we can understand that there is no more reasons for migration. There will be zero migration. So How do you do that? How do you do it? Well, can you? Can you not? Well, we'll see it later. But for now, we see about current situation, which is different levels of economics. We have developing countries and developed countries, and that affects the migration. And some people claim in developed countries that we need to bring people from the outside, and some people claim that we don't, because it only harms the countries which are developing, and it makes unstable the countries which are developed. And I will try to explain how. So, how do you think people who migrate, how do you think they perceive the world where they live? Normally, the people who migrate are the people who understand the most of the problem. They understand that there is no living for them in their country and the country state, so they have to change. They are the people who understand the failures, and they want to. They know that those failures won't get them far, so they want to go to a place where there are no those failures. People who actually migrate are those who are mostly able-bodied, and the most who are having enough skills and capabilities to understand what are the problems and actually being able to fix them if they were to stay in the country. But they move, and normally what migration happens is that you go from developing country to developed country, which means we need a skilled labor for developed countries, and in developing countries, skilled labor is also scarce because, first of all, education levels are very, very different between developing and developed countries. The levels of literacy are different. Uh, the levels of, let's say, academic performance required is different. So you have a small amount of people who understand, who are somewhat educated enough to migrate, and who the people who would be able to make change in their own countries were they not to migrate, but they do. So what happens? Oh, not only that, there are also a few people. So when they migrate, what happens is that the country is left with less and less, let's say, efficient and conscientious people, and because they all migrate. And how much do you think it will affect the prospects of that country? You're basically it's called I think it's called intellectual sinking, when all the smart and educated people who could make change or better in the country for better in the country, they leave to another country because they understand the problems. And how many people do you think is that? You think it's 100%? No. You think it's 50%? No. How many is it? Maybe 5 million from the developing countries that can migrate to developed countries yearly. 5 million from one side to another. And these 5 million could help in each country. They could do some change. But nobody cares in developed country because we need people, because the understanding of fertility and how helping increase birth rates is skewed. So let's invite everybody. And how do you think you would help them? You think this would promote the growth of the economies outside? You think how many other 98% of the population in developing countries will profit from that? No, they won't. They will never be able to leave the country. They will always stay there. They will be born there. They will grow there. They will have family there, and they will die there. And they won't see even a bit of things you, how you say, promote for those who migrate. And so I think it's unjust because people, all the smart people should be helped to foster economic growth in their countries by the investors from the outside. And this can be done, and some understand that it can be done. An example is China, where investors simply went for growth and they invested in local businesses, and that ended up being quite beneficial for the Chinese economy. And political power came after economic power came to China, right? I mean, clearly you can disagree with me since China has a huge population, 1,300,000,000, right? If I'm not wrong. And there is still a lot of poverty. But compared to before, let's say, their regional power, and now they're disputing international influence of other countries in the region, which is an indicator that their economic growth affected their political power. So, what do we think? Some countries don't want to help other countries, otherwise, it will shift the political aspects of the regions. Yes, of course, that is true. Then it would mean more, let's say, less monopoly of power of certain countries like superpowers, and more of a regional powers that are responsible for their, let's say, it's like market competition, where it would be perfect competition. Everybody is responsible for their share, and it's not going to be like monopolies or oligopolies, but not economic this time, but more political and less of an international influence. If you see what I mean. So of course that can be the reason for suffering of the people is that some they just don't care. They just want to have some skilled labor. They don't want to deal with proper growth, and also because they want to keep the monopoly of power internationally. So it's in their interest to prevent economic growth in other countries, so that economic growth doesn't turn into political power, which will contest the influence of superpowers and big countries in that affect the politics in that region, and the image becomes clearer, as you see. One might even say that we all knew that. Well, yes, you did, but could you do about something about that? Did you talk about that to other people? And how many people do you think knew that? You think if you know that, you think everybody else does? 100% of the population does? I would say probably like 10% of the population understands that. What happens to other 90%? How do you do that, huh? They don't know. They don't even think about this. They don't care. They have a comfy life and they are not really bothered by that. And they think they're actually helping the migrants or refugees just by bringing them in millions and saying, "Oh, we're actually making difference." No, you're not. Imagine the whole all these developed countries. They take in migrants. Let's say they take 50 million. All right, 50 million yearly. They would take 50 million migrants yearly, despite their educational level, literacy level, and or any other academic achievements. So what do you think would be the effect? All these developed countries have extra 50 million people, all right? How do you think it affects the economy? Huh? How do you think it affects the wages? How it affects the prices? How it affects the market labor? How it affects the taxes? Who do you think gonna sustain the lives of all those people? And even if it's even 50 million people, okay, 50, which is crazy, all right? Even if you consider the countries, 50 million per year is crazy to try from developing to developed countries. The world, developing countries, the rest of the world, which is developing countries, how much do they do per year? 75 million. So it means there will be still on top 25 million people who are being born every year who won't be able to who won't get helped. So it means you have the standard 5.5 billion people, and on top of this, every year 25 million plus, because the developed countries can take other 50 million only yearly. You just think about it. I'm just taking this number out of thin air, but 50 million is a lot of people, and will not only overwhelm the security system, the welfare states, and taxations, not only overwhelm and undermine the economics of the countries. This will be rather catastrophic. So what do you do? Huh? You think you can help them? They just bring 70 million. What is gonna happen? You bring 70 million, and 70 million is being born. So all the developed countries take 70 million yearly, all right? And so what we have is the rest of the world stays at the same level, which is other 5 billion people are still not being helped. And how do you think for how many years you can hold it like that and intake 70, how much? 70 million people, 75 yearly. How long it will take for countries to collapse? Germany suffered just by taking 2 million people in 2015. 2015, 2016, 2 million people. They were overwhelmed. The taxes are affected. The infrastructure system, the amount of prospects that they needed for those people to be created, the amount of money that they need to spend to sustain those people. And of course, the general population understood that we cannot sustain this all. It's unsustainable. And what happens? Oh, we cannot take any more refugees. So they do what? They pay to the Turkish government, 6 billion euros to stop the flow of the refugees. Why all of a sudden? Why suddenly change of hearts? Oh, because it affects the economies, and there will be no more economy if you bring everybody in. You cannot do that. You cannot you, you cannot say we're going to be the same economically powerful if we bring 2 million, all right? And now imagine every country in Europe takes another million, all right? And that's going to be like what? 40 million, all right, 50 million, and then US takes, and then Canada takes, and then Japan takes, and then Australia and New Zealand takes, all right? And it's going to be 70 million. And see for how long all these countries will survive and be economically prosperous. I dare you to give me the, I say, very realistic result, realistically optimistic results. That would be extremely, I would say, impossible. So, of course, migration is not the answer. The answer is investment in those countries. The answer is to give power by giving investment incentives for the people who can actually change something, by helping them, let's say, through economic power, change the political power. If you don't want to invade a country because you don't like their economics and politics, you just invest, and you make them slowly but steadily grow prosperously. And of course, if the government goes all crazy and authoritarian and seizes the the private property, you just let it default. And then when the new government comes around, you do what? You help it realize that the previous doesn't work, and um, you better make amends and start thinking how to be efficient, so that your people don't starve to death and don't have to hunt for squirrels in the goddamn forest. But no. Why would one need that, right? Why would somebody need that? Nobody needs that. We live happily ever after. We can take 70 million people yearly, and it would. And what about other 5 billion people? Well, what are you gonna do to them? Huh? You just gonna let them be there? Not only are you gonna get overwhelmed systematically. It's, again, this understanding of migration is deeply flawed because it's inefficient, because it's, let's say, not only that it would get rid of a lot of conflicts that happen between migrants and the local population, which happens to be from cultural distance being reduced. I'll talk about later what is cultural distance and how it has historically was established, and what are reasons for the borders actually. What is that? But more about that on later stage. But these things would also not happen because nobody would care. They would be doing their thing, and if their economically system economically don't survive, it's their problem. You can help them, but if they refuse, they fail. And once they fail, the next time around they trying again. Maybe they realize that they failed for those reasons, and if they don't, well, it's bad for them. They will hopefully learn, otherwise they will never overcome others. And you just lead by example. The only way is to lead by example. And example of taking migration won't help anybody. It will only make things worse, because people who support that, they don't understand they first of all, they don't help anybody. They help a small, it's like 1%. How about helping everybody instead of just 1%? Oh, no, we cannot. We have to take everybody. This argument is flawed. This argument is just to play on emotions, to support the political power for themselves. If they understood economics, and they would know, well, we shouldn't do it. We can actually help those people in much better way, and even more people in much better way. But no, we shouldn't do it. This is very selfish actually. It was like, oh, we're not selfish. We're helping people, but we're helping only 1%. We cannot help 100%, because when we help 100%, they don't work for us. Therefore, it's not good for us. Well, what do you expect? This just shows the kind of people that you are if you support that. You're just shallow, low people who want to exploit the useful people from other countries to sustain your own system where you do nothing. You just have fun and party and enjoy your holidays and travel. Oh my God, I like it so much. No, you're just a selfish, arrogant, terrible person, and you make other 99% suffer. If you're a good person, make them, help them. Come on. It's I don't want to help 1%. I want to help 100%. So do that. Oh, you don't want to? Why? Because it's not in my interest. I want these people in, but I don't want them all in. First of all, it will damage us. Of course, it will damage you. But second of all, I'm still helping. Helping 1% is better than 100. Well, because you don't know how to help everybody and you know how to help 1%, doesn't mean that others don't. So shut up and get back in line if you don't know anything. But sadly, politics don't work this way. Economics don't work this way. You have to vote and elect for people, and other people think the same way people are being told to think, and then intelligence affects and then education levels affect that. And then what you have people, yes, we're actually helping by inviting million people yearly. No, you're not helping. There are other 60, 70 million on top yearly that need that help. Where does it come? Where is it? Huh? Where is your help? Who are you helping? You're helping yourself by exploiting them. Well, I might get a bit emotional, but what I mean is that people, I'm not even, I forgot, it's very important to mention automation, but let's not go into there yet. Later. when we cover other ideologies, I will start probably the series on ideologies, and I'm gonna be reviewing which are the good and the bad and the ugly. So what do you have? You have these people who take 70 million, which doesn't happen actually. So what we have yearly growth of extra 70 million. So it's extra 70 million on top of the population which you have to help in the developing countries. Extra 70 appear each year. Let's say you take the best of the best. That's the ones that actually migrate because they're able to. They understand enough, they're educated well enough, and they migrate. So you basically best of the best leave those countries, and you expect somehow for the growth to happen while all those people work for you? No, of course not. It's not gonna happen. But no, I'm virtuous, and I love myself, because I'm such a good person. Pat on the back, yes, yes. We're not terrible racist people. We're not xenophobic. We're not what any kind of phobic. No, no, no. We're helping them. No, you're not helping him. You're helping yourself, and you're hiding behind those words, behind that virtuous, behind those virtuous things, which are not virtuous. If you were really to help them, you would help them all. You would try to help them all, but you don't want to. You don't care because you want to sustain your way of life, and for that you need cattle. And how do you and where do you get high qualified cattle? Well, you get that in developing countries, right? Because those people struggle, and they have hard time arguing with you, because if they don't have what they can, they go back to their country, so they have to accept the terms and conditions, right? We're such nice benevolent people, we're actually helping them. Oh, you know what? The payments that these people do, that they send the money they send back from their work to their countries, actually to their families, actually helping the growth of those economies. Well, this claim is actually wrong. And let's say the effect that these 10 let's say 5 million people yearly, the effect they will do on other growing population, which exponentially grows much faster than the amount of people that migrate, it will never reach those levels. It will never gonna happen that way. But no, we cannot say otherwise, because then it means we're just exploiting them. Yes, you are, and you have to understand that. Just go to United Nations and see the projections. It's not hard. Don't believe me. I'm here just blubbering. Just go to United Nations, write demographic projections or demographics yearly, and see how much it is in the West, the developed countries, and see how much it is population growth in developing countries, and see the migration levels, and think how much it would affect you if all the developed countries would take 70 million people yearly, huh? Of course. It would hurt, right? It would hurt being wrong. You would get into denial. But remember, the grief has 7 stages, and the last stage is acceptance. And once you accept, you finally can move on and really help other 98, 99% of the world population that are hungry. Well, they're not hungry, okay? They're living in precarious state, which makes them never reach the levels of your living conditions ever in their lifetime. But no, let's all virtue signal and be gracious, good people we are, and everybody knows about us being that. No, 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 no. That is not how it works, all right? And that is not the way for migration. The economic growth should happen, and investment into those countries should happen, so these people can actually help other billions, okay? Billions of people. It's billions, billions with the B, all right? It's not millions. By taking millions, you don't help billions. Million people, million migrants won't help with their transfers to the developing countries to help the other billions, all right? Not mathematically, it will not work, all right? And once you understand that, you start being disturbed and you go, well, this guy is an idiot. Well, yeah, I'm totally am an idiot. And it does never happen. And we live on some other planet in the parallel universe where nothing makes sense, all right? Only people like you make sense, and I am just an idiot. And as a faithful idiot, I would say, think for yourself, right? Check for yourself. Don't trust me. It's all, after all, I just made it up. It's all made up, okay? It's all made up. It's never happened. Anyway, I think the next episodes I will be covering the European Union and the possible fall of the European Union. Sorry, inevitable fall of European Union. We will also cover finally, if I only I had time to cover the intelligence and the effects of it on the economies and countries worldwide, and also what would be the efficient economies to help other countries come out of the rubble. As well, I will try to start a series on reviewing different ideologies and their economic perspectives and their economic stances, mostly economic stances. I'll also cover political, since they're intertwined in most cases. and then we'll see which are the most efficient, least efficient, which are to be favored, which are to be avoided, which are the good, and which are the bad. All right, beyond good and evil, let's say. Cheers.